Today on Dead Dodge Garage, let's test the structural rigidity of my two-post lift. This is a 4.7 Dodge engine. It's bad. If you know me at all, you've spent any time on this channel and heard my thoughts on Magnum engines, you know I love them, but this one doesn't count. This is the overhead cam engine that they kind of made to keep up with the Joneses. It's loosely based off of the Ford 4.6 and 5.4 series. And it's bad. Everything about it's bad. What usually happens to these things is they overheat, develop head gasket leaks, and then coolant gets into the cylinders. They end up with horrible rust pitting in there, and they smoke, and the heads warp, and yeah, they're just bad. And so it was with the 4.7 in this Dakota. Yeah, big surprise. This is one of 3 projects left over from my shop days. The shop closed in July, so these definitely should have been done by now, and well, they were all supposed to be, but it didn't work out that way. If you've watched any of the videos I've filmed here over the last 6 months, you know this thing's been in the background the whole time, staring at me, taunting me, cursing my existence with its existence. So I decided, you know what? I should probably take care of this. And I decided to drag it into the shop the other day. I went ahead and used the winch on the Power Wagon. That went about as well as expected. Everything's fine. Don't mind the horrible popping sounds. This is working great. Just a little sketchy, you know? Just a little. Wile E. Coyote. Genius. This is either madness or brilliance. You know, it's remarkable how often those two traits coincide. It was a good plan. Until now. Well, okay. I guess I'll just fire it up with no oil pressure and get it the rest of the way. Now, what's the worst that could happen? And I guess I'll be ordering that new winch wire sooner than I thought. Anyway, it made it in here and nobody died. You may see some shiny new paint there on that block, as well as a rebuilder tag. There's a reason for that. Despite my best efforts to convince him otherwise, the owner of this truck really wanted it fixed. He likes it. It's in good shape. It's got brand new tires. So it's worth spending another $4,000 to $5,000 on an engine, right? It's a 4.7. Like, can we just not? I don't know which is worse, a 4.7 or a Hemi. This blown up hunk of crap is still sitting here in my way to taunt me too. So, despite everyone around him telling him this is probably a bad idea, the owner went ahead with replacing the engine. In fact, he sold one of his beloved prized motorcycles to pay for it. And that was about a year ago. The engine took a while to get because, well, you know, the world ended and it takes a while to get anything anymore. And once it did finally come, of course, we had 700 other jobs. There's nothing to kill momentum on a project like paying for it ahead of time. But we did finally get it done. And we finally started it up after getting it done. And bad stuff happened. This mechanical oil pressure gauge over here is a clue. Now let me start by saying I did not do the assembly and install on this job. I did hire the guy that did, so I think it's still my fault. On a first start, it's normal for a brand new engine to make clattery noises, and then they should go away. Unfortunately, the clattery noises never went away on this thing, and we realized the gauge was reading absolutely 0. We thought maybe the pressure sensor was bad. How could it possibly be 0? So we replaced that. Still 0. Eventually, I put a mechanical gauge on it. Still 0. The truck ended up parked at the shop as we scrambled to get everything else horrible done so we could, you know, close the place and move on with our lives. And we just kind of never got back to figuring this out. We thought it was a warranty issue. I eventually came to realize, well, it wasn't. So here's the thing about engines. They really like bottom end lubrication. They like it a lot. And when they don't have it, even for just a few minutes, bad stuff can happen. Especially when they're brand new and there's not very much lubrication in there to go around. So, don't think I'm getting away with just, you know, an oil change on this deal. There's a lot of bad in here to see, but what do you see right there? Hello? It's like metal paste. Nice. Real nice. That is the bolt that's supposed to secure the oil pump pickup to the block. It was never tightened. The 3 that tighten the pan gasket and pick up to the main saddle, those were tight, but not the little one. And it turns out it's the most important. You may notice there's oil all the way up to like the main girdle there, and the rod ends actually have oil on them too. And there's a reason for that. The reason is we intentionally massively overfilled this thing to try and get oil up to the pump, thinking we may have a sealing issue there, at the behest of the engine rebuilding company. If we had put in another like 2 quarts, the oil pump might not be totally dry still. Did you know that in the labor guide under R&R oil pan for a 2002 4-wheel drive Dakota, it says 15 hours because you have to remove the engine? Well, that's not true, but you do have to remove a bunch of other stuff. Steering rack, the entire axle, you know, little things. Unfortunately, by the time I realized what was happening here, the party was already over. I don't think you can really see it on camera, but there are a bunch of shreds of metal coming out of main bearing number 4 because it spun. The most interesting detail in this for me is that the rods seem to be perfectly fine. And that just figures because, you know, rod bearings would be easy enough to replace at this stage. Nope, just the mains, because we did not quite brim this thing with enough extra oil. And even if we had, it was probably already done. There's the reluctor wheel for the crankshaft sensor. Did you know that these changed in like 2003? Yeah, so they're early 4.7s and late 4.7s. Don't mix them up or you'll have a bad time. You know what I never, ever in my entire life wanted to do? Rebuild a 4.7, but that's what we're doing now. I don't want to name names or, you know, throw anybody under the bus. Jordan! My throat's really messed up today. But here's the thing, guys. This could happen to you. This could happen to anybody. Like, just double check your work. Check every bolt you touch. Go over things twice. Take pictures. You know, leave yourself notes. Paint mark bolts. That's what I do in the bottom ends of engines. This is important stuff. You really don't want to destroy a $4,000 engine. It's not really fun. I had really hoped this would be in and out today, and that's clearly not going to happen. If this were a standard old school, you know, V8 engine with main caps that come right off, I'd pop those off and see what we got. Honestly, at this stage of the game, I don't even know if the block and crank are savable, so I need to at least get into that point. Unfortunately, because it uses this giant girdle design, the timing cover's bolted onto it, among other things, and it's really not going to be practical to do that, you know, remove that girdle in the truck. So I think it's time to pull the engine. Now, the good news is, if the block and crank aren't savable, well, there's one right there. I'm sure Dalton won't mind. Oh, also, did you guys know winter is here? Yeah, right on time as usual. It's a little warmer than 26 degrees inside the shop, so that's the good news. This is not a 4.7 replacement or rebuild guide. If your 4.7 needs rebuilt or replaced, throw the truck away and get one with a 5.2. But my customer paid to have this thing fixed, so I've got to fix it. Might as well bring you along. Well, you know, the good news is we never really fully filled it with coolant since it had no oil pressure. Have I ever mentioned that I hate 4.7s? I know hate's a strong word, that's why I'm using it. Man, this thing's hungry today. Come on, you can do it! Alright, I decided to try and pull the girdle before actually yanking the engine. Just because, you know, the exhaust looks annoying. Woo! Also, that girdle's huge and made of cast iron, so it's heavy. That's cool. Number 1 and 5 are fine. These other ones, not so much. It's almost exactly the same situation as that 318 from the other week, except, well, the crank's still in one piece. And it actually looks really good. This is not what you want to see on your brand new main bearing in your freshly rebuilt engine. Now, of course, these are a special size, 0.25 mil, undersized, so I can't just, you know, order them. Rather inconveniently, all the upper shells are pretty stuck. I don't know if I want to try to roll bearings into this or if I just want to take it apart. Decisions are hard. This might help me make a decision. they rolled right out of there. No problem. The thrust surfaces came down too. I might need to replace those. They don't look great, but they don't look as bad as the mains. The only reason I'm even considering this is because the crank looks perfect. There are no marks on it at all. You can see lines. I haven't cleaned it yet, but there's nothing up here that catches a fingernail. Nothing. So that's encouraging. Thrust surfaces are perfect too. Those lines are just on the bearing from bits that got in there, but it didn't run long enough to ruin everything, you know? Yeah. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to think about this. Just for the record, I already ordered a crankshaft kit, but I really don't think I need to replace the crank. It looks fine. There are no marks on it. I think I just need to clean everything really thoroughly and say a couple prayers. This is bad, but it could be much, much worse. None of these saddle points are damaged. I mean, fresh bearings will pop right into there. It looked like these had just started to spin, like they were down to the bottoms of the notches. But they weren't actually spinning around yet, so I think I got away with it. It's kind of weird. Anyway, let this be a lesson to you. If you're gonna do a big job like this, be thorough, check everything. And if you have doubts, maybe you just shouldn't do it. Okay, I get it. Your battery's dead. There's nothing I can do. I can't reach you. And let this also be a lesson that you can get the oil pan out of a 4.7 truck by dropping the diff in the steering rack. And you can probably roll main bearings into it if you leave the oil pickup loose on your brand new remanufactured engine. But I really don't think you should. Also, just because you removed the thermostat and the water pump and thought you drained every last bit of coolant out of it doesn't mean you did, so yay. Well, yeah, I'm gonna go reconsider my life choices. Oh, come on. It's probably time for a drink. There probably won't be a thrilling conclusion to this saga because, yeah, just because. I don't even want to think about it. But this thing will probably live to break another day. Anyway, thanks for watching. And remember, loose bolts sink ships and Dakotas.